is a live Bernie Sanders event happening now in Toledo, Ohio. So we're going to go to the live event instead. Live Toledo, Ohio, a Bernie Sanders event.
She has stood up against Wall Street and the strongest opponent to trade deals that have destroyed communities and shipped good jobs overseas. Toledoans, join me in giving Marcy Kaptur a great Toledo welcome.
Thank you, my dear friend Baltimore, and thank you all for coming to build a better and stronger America. Thank you for your time today. We love you, and we desperately love this country, and we want it to be a country for all, not just the privileged few. And I want to thank all those who preceded me on the program today. State Senator Nina Turner, whose passion and energy for real change is always evident. And my esteemed colleague from Hawaii, Representative Tulsi Gabbard, whose service to our country has taken her from the battlefields of Iraq to the battlefields of Congress in Washington, D.C. And my dear friend Baltimore, with whom it has been an honor to fight for over 3 decades for economic fairness and justice for all. I was reminded when Baltimore and I were the age of some of the younger people in the front rows here, we were boycotting grapes with Cesar Chavez to try to change the lives of ordinary people. And as I begin my remarks today, I dedicate my remarks to the 3 25thers. You may not know them, but they were members of the 3rd Battalion, 25th Regiment, 4th Marine Division in Brook Park, Ohio, which is in the 9th Congressional District. And just over 10 years ago, 14 members of that unit in one of the worst engagements in Iraq lost 14 of their members, along with 26 others who were killed from other parts of our country, and over 200 wounded. We remember them as we fight for our country in a different way.
Toledo, thank you. What a turnout. Thank you so much. Let me thank Nina Turner, one of the great political leaders here in the state of Ohio. Nina, thank you so much. And let me thank Kristen Robideau on our staff, David Engels from the UAW, thank you so much. Mike Futrell. Let me thank Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard for being here, for being a real voice of conscience. and Baldemar Velasquez, active in the labor movement. And lastly, again, let me thank all of you for doing a real service for the American people, sending Marcy Kappa to the Congress. I have known Marcy for decades, and what I want to tell you, there is honestly nobody in the United States Congress who fights harder for working people than your Congresswoman, Marcy Kappa. Thank you for sending her. Now, I know that the people in Ohio do not necessarily know a whole lot about Bernie Sanders. Let me just say a few things. Thank you. I learned about economics not from school books, but from living in a family and growing up in a family that did not have a lot of money. And I remember like it was yesterday the stress and the struggles that existed in our family about whether we could buy this or do that or do that. That lesson of growing up in a family that struggled economically is a lesson. And I know today that we are the richest country in the history of the world, but the vast majority of the people in Ohio and America don't know that because they are working longer hours for lower wages while almost all of the new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. So what we are going to do as a nation is create an economy that works for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. Now, what this campaign is about is asking people to think outside of the box, outside of the status quo, outside of the presentation by corporate media about what they think we should be doing. It is to ask some hard questions. Here's the question. In the last 30 years, there has been an explosion in technology. Every worker in America today is producing far more than he or she did 20, 30 years ago. Given that reality, why is it that millions of our people are working longer hours for lower wages? Why is it that millions of new jobs are paying less than those same jobs paid 20 years ago? Why is it that over the last 30 years we have seen a massive transfer of wealth from the pockets of working people into the hands of the top 1/10 of 1%? Why is it that today, and listen to this because this is really pretty shocking, why is it today that the top 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%? Why is it that the wealthiest 20 people in this country now own more wealth than the bottom 150 million Americans, half our population? Why is it that in a time of a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires, we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth? Brothers and sisters, together we are going to create an economy that works for workers, that works for our children, that works for seniors, that works for veterans, and not just works for the top 1%. Now, Secretary Clinton and I have a whole lot of differences in terms of our views, in terms of our votes, in terms of the positions that we have taken over many, many years. I want to talk about one which is of enormous consequence to the workers in Ohio and, in fact, throughout this country. When I was first elected to the United States Senate in the early 1990s, the issue of NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, surfaced. And what corporate America and what the Republicans and what some of the Democrats were saying, this is going to be a great agreement, going to create all kinds of jobs in America. I didn't believe that for 1 second. And in fact, in the early 1990s, I was on the picket lines in opposition to NAFTA. And years later, I opposed an even worse trade agreement, permanent normal trade relations with China. Now, to my mind, you didn't need a PhD in economics to understand that a trade agreement written by corporate America was designed to force American workers to compete against desperately poor people all over the world. And in my view, American workers should not have to compete against people making pennies an hour. And the results of NAFTA, the results of the trade agreement with China, is that this country has lost millions of decent paying jobs. Communities around this country here in the Midwest, in Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, have been devastated. Since 2001, this country has lost almost 60,000 factories. 60,000 factories. And many of the jobs that were lost were good-paying jobs, union jobs, jobs with health care, decent benefits. And when workers lost those jobs, they were forced, in many instances, to take jobs that paid half the wages and often without any benefits at all. Now, one of the major differences between Secretary Clinton and myself is she supported virtually all of those disastrous trade agreements. I opposed all of those disastrous trade agreements. And I think that history will record that my vote was the right vote. Her support for those trade agreements was absolutely wrong and devastating. I want to tell you a brief story. In the early 1990s, I went with a congressional delegation to the Maquiladora area in Mexico. And that's a region in Mexico where companies, American companies, European companies, are able to exist and put factories in a tax-free zone. I went to visit those factories, and what I saw in Mexico were factories that were owned by major American corporations, some European corporations, state-of-the-art, beautiful factories in the early 1990s. And I said, I want to go out and I want to visit the workers in those factories. I want to go to their homes and talk to them. The only problem was I couldn't go to the homes of some of those workers, because those workers were not living in homes, they were living in cardboard shacks, drinking filthy water. So what those trade agreements were about are throwing American workers out on the street and exploiting ruthlessly Mexican workers. I've got a message for corporate America, and that is, you want us to purchase your products. Every night you advertise on TV, buy this, buy that, buy the other thing. If you want us to buy your products, the time is long overdue for you to start manufacturing those products here in the United States. Here in the United States and not in China or other low-wage countries. And right now we're dealing with this Trans-Pacific Partnership. Something that I opposed from day one because the same old disastrous trade policies. No, I do not believe that American workers should have to compete against people in Vietnam where the minimum wage is 65 cents an hour. That is not the kind of trade agreements I will support. I believe in fair trade, not unfettered free trade. Number two, you know, there's an expression in American politics called follow the money. Follow the money. Where do candidates get their money from? One of the very significant disagreements, I was going to say huge disagreements, but I knew it would trigger that response. But one of the major disagreements and approaches that I have with Secretary Clinton is how we raise funds that we need to run for office. It's a pretty expensive proposition. When I began this campaign, I had to make a decision. And the decision was with the understanding that every candidate out there had a super PAC. Super PACs which raise large amounts of money from corporations and special interests. Would I go the same route as the other candidates? And it took me about 1/10 of a second to say, no, we're not going to do it that way. Truth is, I do not represent Wall Street, do not represent corporate America, do not represent the billionaire class. I don't want their money. And what we did instead, and it has frankly amazed me, because I would never have dreamed that this could happen, over the last 10 months, we have received for our campaign over 5 million individual contributions. More individual contributions than any candidate in the history of the United States of America. At this point in a campaign, and you know what the average contribution is? Brilliant. This is a brilliant group of people. $27. To paraphrase Abraham Lincoln in Gettysburg, this is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now, Secretary Clinton has taken a different road in terms of raising money. She has several super PACs, and her largest super PAC a while back reported that in their last filing period, they received $25 million from special interest, $15 million from Wall Street alone. In addition, as many of you know, Secretary Clinton has given speeches to Goldman Sachs, a major financial institution, behind closed doors, and earned $225,000 a speech. I believe she gave 3 speeches. Now, what I believe about those speeches is if you get paid $225,000 for a speech, it must be a fantastic speech. It must be a speech of Shakespearean quality. So I think that for $225,000, she might want to share the wisdom in that speech with all of us. Now, Secretary Clinton says, well, she'll do that if other people make their transcripts available. So let me make a dramatic announcement right here in Toledo. I am prepared right now to release all of the transcripts that I have given transcripts that I have given in my speeches to Wall Street, which is pretty easy because there ain't no transcript, no speeches at all. And if I did give a speech to Wall Street, it would not be behind closed doors. It would be in front of all these TV cameras. And what I would tell them is that their greed, their recklessness, and their illegal behavior helped destroy this economy. And that 3 out of 4 of the largest financial institutions in this country today are bigger than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. Therefore, we've got to reestablish Glass-Steagall legislation. And even more significantly, we've got to break them up. Now, I don't know. Maybe that's why I haven't gotten an invitation from Wall Street. I don't know. I disagree, and I think Congresswoman Gabbard, Tulsi Gabbard, talked about this a little bit. Foreign policy, obviously, is one of the very, very important roles that a president has. The most important foreign policy decision that has been made in this country in modern American history was whether or not we should go to war in Iraq. I listened very carefully to what President Bush and Vice President Cheney had to say about that war. I didn't believe one word of it. I voted against that war. Secretary Clinton heard the same evidence that I heard. She voted for that war. So I think when we talk about foreign policy, one of us applied good judgment, one of us didn't. Now, in this campaign, I have been accused of thinking too big. of thinking about the kind of country that you and I know that we can be. I have been accused of stating that it is irresponsible to understand that there is something fundamentally wrong when hundreds of thousands of bright, qualified young people are unable to afford to go to college. That it is wrong to acknowledge the absurdity of millions of people in this country, some young and some not so young, being crushed under the burden of heavy student debt. Anybody here have student debt? And I've talked to people all over this country, 30,000, 50,000, a doctor in Vermont, 300,000, dentist in Iowa, 400,000, people paying over 50% of their limited income in student debt repayments. Enough to be talking about first grade through 12th grade. The world has changed. The nature of our economy has changed. People need more education. And that is why I believe that in 2016, when we talk about public education, we talk about making public colleges and universities tuition free. And we also recognize that it is crazy, and I mean crazy, to tell millions of people that they're going to have to be paying off student debt for decades. For what crime did they commit? For trying to get the best education they could? That's not a crime. People should be rewarded, not punished, for getting an education. I believe that we should allow people with student debt to refinance that debt at the lowest interest rates they can find, substantially lower student debt. Now, I am told by my opponents and the corporate media and the establishment, Bernie, you're Santa Claus, you want to give it all away. How are you going to pay for it? Well, let me tell you how we are going to pay for it. We're going to impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. When Wall Street's greed helped the middle class of this country. This campaign is discussing some very unpleasant truths about America, but I believe it is important for us to face up to where we are, because we cannot go forward unless we have a serious discussion about where we are today. And let me tell you three things. Number one, I'm not happy to tell you this, but it's the truth. Today in America, we have a corrupt campaign finance system. Which is undermining American democracy. I wish I could come up with a softer, less harsh word, but that's what it is. When you have the Koch brothers and other billionaire families spending $900 million to elect candidates who represent the wealthy and the powerful, that is not democracy, that is oligarchy. We're going to change that. And then we've got a rigged economy. What does a rigged economy mean? A rigged economy means that the average American's working longer hours for low wages. People are working 1, 2, 3 jobs to cobble together some income and some health care. 58% of all new income created is going to the top 1%. That's a rigged economy. A rigged economy is when corporations make billions of dollars a year in profit, stash their money in the Cayman Islands and in other tax havens, and don't pay a penny in federal income tax. That's a rigged economy. A rigged economy is when one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. And a rigged economy is when that wealthy family, the wealthiest family in America, becomes the largest recipient of welfare in the United States of America. The wages paid at Walmart are so low that many of their employees are forced to rely on Medicaid, food stamps, and subsidized housing in order to survive. You pay taxes to provide Medicaid, food stamps, and subsidized housing for the employees of the wealthiest family in America. That is a rigged economy. And I say to the Walton family, get off of welfare, pay your workers a living wage. And when we talk about wages in America, every person here and almost everybody in America, Republican, Democrat, Independent, everybody knows that a $7.25 minimum wage is a starvation wage. You can't make it on $7.25, you can't make it on $9, you can't make it on $10. And that is why together we're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And everybody here also knows that there is something fundamentally wrong when women go to work tomorrow, go to work on Monday, and they're sitting in a room with some guy, and that woman is making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. And that is why I hope and expect that every man in this room will stand with the women in the fight for pay equity. This campaign is listening to the American people, not wealthy campaign contributors. We are listening to senior citizens and disabled veterans. And what they are telling me is they can't make it on $11,000, $12,000 a year Social Security. Now, amazingly enough, and it really is beyond comprehension, you got Republicans out there who want to cut Social Security. Well, I've got bad news for them. We're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security benefits. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the African American community. And they understand, as we all do, that the current criminal justice system is broken. That it is unacceptable that this country has more people in jail than any other country on earth. Large largely African American, Latino, and Native Americans. And here's my pledge to you. One term in the White House, we will not have more people in jail. We are going to invest in education and jobs for our young people, not jail and incarceration. And everyone, every decent person in this country, black, white, Latino, Asian American, whoever, are sick and tired of watching videos of unarmed people, often African American, being shot by police officers. I am a former mayor, Burlington, Vermont, and I've worked with police officers for decades. Vast majority of police officers in this country are hardworking, honest, and have a very difficult job in front of them. But if a police officer, like any other public official, breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. Whether it is Ferguson, Missouri, or any other community in America, we've got to start demilitarizing our local police departments. Police departments should look like the diversity of the communities they serve. In my state of Vermont, joining New Hampshire and all over this country, we have a major crisis in terms of heroin addiction and overdoses and opiate addiction and overdoses. A major national crisis. What we have got to understand is that substance abuse and drug addiction are mental health issues, not criminal issues. Instead of arresting addicts, we need to get them the treatment when they need it. Now, we also have to recognize another unpleasant truth, and that is, in many respects, the so-called war on drugs has failed. Right now, as part of the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug, the highest level, right alongside of heroin. Now, we can argue, and scientists do argue, the pluses and the minuses of marijuana, but no sane person believes that marijuana is similar to heroin. Heroin is a killer drug. And that is why I have introduced legislation to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. I am a member of the United States Senate Committee on the Environment. And in that capacity, I have spoken to scientists all over our country and all over the world. The debate is over. Climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity, and climate change is already doing devastating damage in our country and all over the world. And what the scientists tell us, and this is very scary stuff, is if we don't get our act together in a short period of time, this planet will be between 5 and 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer by the end of this century. More drought, more flood, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean, more rising sea levels, more international conflict as people fight over limited natural resources. We have a moral obligation to work with China, Russia, India, and countries all over this world in standing up to the fossil fuel industry and telling them that their short-term profits are not as important as leaving this planet habitable for our children and our grandchildren. Now, Republicans go all over this country. They talk about family values. And I want to be clear, I know not everybody agrees with me and I respect other people's opinion, but when Republicans talk about family values, what they are saying is that every woman in this room, in this state, in this country, does not have the right to control her own body. I disagree. And what they are saying is that our gay brothers and sisters do not have the right to be married. I disagree. Now, when I talk about family values, and my wife Jane and I have been married for 27 years, we got 4 kids. What we talk about is the international embarrassment of the United States being the only major country on earth that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. And here is the outrage. Today in Ohio, today in Vermont, a woman is giving birth to a beautiful baby. But if that mom is working class or low income, the likelihood is that she is going to have to separate herself from that baby in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because she has to go back to work and earn enough income to take care of that family. That is exactly the right response. Mothers should not be forced to be separated from their babies because they lack income. And that is why I strongly support legislation in the Congress that guarantees every family in this country 3 months of paid family and medical leave. I was in Flint, Michigan last week. And what I saw there and what I heard from people there literally shook me. After talking to a group of people, I had to go out and give a speech. It was very hard for me to give that speech, because what I heard from parents was that for the last several years, their beautiful children were being poisoned by lead in the water. And these moms were seeing with their own eyes the cognitive destruction of their children. Can you imagine being a parent and seeing kids who are bright, outgoing, now in special education because of lead poisoning? To imagine for 1 minute attention. And Flint may be the most extreme example, but all over this country, cities are struggling with their water systems, with their wastewater plants. In my state of Vermont, we have bridges which are in massive disrepair. Roads all over this country need work. Our rail system used to be the best in the world. We're now falling behind other countries. Airports, levees, dams need enormous amounts of work. This is America. Our infrastructure should not be collapsing. And that is why I have proposed a $1 trillion investment to create 13. Now, I've been criticized for a lot of things in this campaign, but the basic criticism is I am thinking too big. I am trying to help create an America that works for all of us, not just the people on top. And the ruling class of America feels uncomfortable with that idea. And let me give you a very clear example of this. Every major country on earth, whether it's the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Holland, Scandinavia, Canada, every major country on earth guarantees health care to all of their people. That's a fact. Now, I'm a member of the committee that helped write the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act has done some very good things. We have ended this obscenity called pre-existing conditions. 17 million Americans now have health insurance who previously didn't. We have ended discrimination against women in terms of the cost of their health care premiums because they were women. But here's the other reality. Despite the gains of the ACA, 29 million Americans have no health insurance, and many of you are underinsured with high deductibles and high copayments. All of you and every person in this country is paying the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs because the pharmaceutical industry is ripping us off big time. Prescribed. That's crazy. Meanwhile, on top of all of that, we end up paying far, far more per capita for health care than do the people of any other country. We pay almost 3 times what the British do, 50% more than the French, much more than the Canadians. And that is why I believe, and I have always believed, that health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. And that is why I believe we should move forward toward a Medicare for all health care system. And moving in that direction guarantees quality, comprehensive care for all. We save middle-class families thousands of dollars a year on their health care costs. Now, one of the criticisms leveled at me is people say, well, Bernie, You're a nice guy. You comb your hair really nicely. You're a top-notch dresser. But despite those attributes, you really can't win a general election in November. So let me tell those people that if you look at the polls out there, virtually every poll has me beating Donald Trump, often by double digits. Often by double digits, and it's the same thing in battleground states. The poll done in Michigan a week or two ago, we were ahead of them by 19 points in Michigan. And in fact, almost all of those polls have us beating Trump by a wider margin than Hillary Clinton. But more important than polls, together we will beat Donald Trump because the American people will not accept a president who insults Mexicans. We will not accept a president who insults Muslims. We will not accept a president who insults women. We will not accept a president who insults the African American community. And I want everybody here to remember, because some of you may have forgotten, that Trump was one of the leaders of the so-called birther movement. And that was a very dangerous and ugly effort to try to delegitimize President Barack Obama. To suggest that he shouldn't be president because he was supposedly not born in America. Well, a funny thing, President Obama's father was born in Kenya. My father was born in Poland. Nobody has asked me for my birth certificate. You think maybe it has something to do with the color of my skin? I do. Now, we will defeat Trump because the American people understand that bringing our people together, black and white and Latino and Asian American, gay and straight, people born in this country, people born abroad, bringing us together will always trump dividing us up. The American people understand that community, helping each other, working together, always trumps selfishness. And maybe most importantly, what the American people understand is what every major religion on earth has taught us, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism. And that is that at the end of the day, love trumps hatred. Now, when we began this campaign was considered to be a fringe campaign. We have since won 9 state primaries and caucuses. And we have won most of them by double-digit margins. Now, what we have learned from this campaign is a pretty simple political principle, and that is when there are large voter turnouts, when working people and young people and people who have given up on the political process jump back in and demand that our government represents all of us, when there are large voter turnouts, we win, and often win big. Now, in Michigan last Tuesday, we were told, oh, you can't win. That state is not for you. But you know what happened? There was a huge voter turnout. In some precincts, they ran out of ballots. That's how big it was. If we can have a similar type turnout here in Ohio, we're going to win next Tuesday. Ohio has the opportunity